Thank you, Matt. So this next bio I want to read to you briefly, and let me caveat this. This is an interesting gentleman in the fact that he's very friendly and has devoted himself to this community and to witnessing, trying to witness and get an understanding of who we are as EOD Techs, as the EOD family. And I really feel like he's sort of a no stone unturned kind of person. He's also very humble. So when I read his bio to you, you'll find less about who and why he is as a doctorate and all the things he's done, but you'll find that there's a lineage and a linkage that's obviously a deep-rooted passion that he has for his family. As his bio reads, Dr. M.C. Ingerson is an independent applied researcher and consultant. His primary specialties are assessment, selection, training, and development for individual ethical integrity and leader character in teams and group. MC has had to relearn how to read, write, walk, and talk, as well as interact, having multiple major cranial and intercranial surgeries. The main reason he keeps fighting through chronic cranial bone and nerve pain is because his wife Sarah and their daughter Corinne have taken a risk on keeping him in their lives. Their family is humbled by and grateful to the members of the U.S. military and veteran community for their sacrifices and suffering at home and elsewhere around the world to help live and let us live in a country that's free. So apart from the devotion that he has for his family, it becomes evident on the kind of person he is, because I know we all feel that way about our families, and the foundation does about you all. And by the way, his daughter's a crackerjack snowboarder. MC?
Thank you. It's good to be here with each of you. Just so you know, I have a bad ear, so if I miss what you say or talk too loud, I'm not trying to be rude. Also recovering from a major TBI this past year, so if I get confused, you can just blame it on that. And before we go any further, it's Veterans Day. So for those veterans who can hear my voice, welcome home, happy Veterans Day, and we're glad you're home. And for those who are abroad, come home. We love you and we want you to get home safe. So with that in mind, Matt. And Matt is outstanding. I hope Big Navy picks him up as a chaplain soon, but not too soon. So a little bit of background on my family is, and how came to be in this space is, I grew up in a military family. My father, he was a code breaker during Vietnam for the United States Navy. And then after he went and did hard things with his fellow code breakers and others overseas, he returned home and he decided that he was going to go to college and study history. And then he switched after he went to college, met and fell in love with my mom, and he became a trainer of unconventional warfare in the United States Army, and he loved it. And after that, he finished a long life of service to our country with the DoD as an ethics specialist. And that's kind of where I initially began to understand very simply what it meant to love our country and serve our veterans, because our veterans love our country and they serve our country. And one of the things that my father would do at training, because he took me to the trainings from the time that I was 6 years old to 16, and also my younger brother Morgan Dallin Ingerson, who I miss and love, he would take us to these trainings. And in these trainings on my father's course, if you died 3 times on his course, you did not go to combat and you did not make rate. So it was a very serious course. Well, after the first time that everybody had been killed on the course, he would gather them around in a circle and he would say, "Now that I have your attention, I learned what I learned in Africa, and I want you to come home." So that's why we start with coming home, because many times with soul wounds, like Matt indicated, our research has been very clear, and I'd like to thank Dr. J.D. Catterson and Mike Vining and Doc Wood and Chaplain Banza, who aren't here right now, because these insights are not my insights. These insights are the team's insights. So with that in mind, so if we can go. So many times, to make this very simple on distilling these differences, even though they are co-constitutive or comorbid, or they hang together, is there. Let's do a little conversation where those of us out there who are listening, who want to help their veteran EOD tech, who want to help the veteran who might not be an EOD tech, but maybe the EOD tech wants to help his or her friend who has served, who might be suffering from a soul wound. So Matt, you want to go back and forth? You can represent the person who wants to help, and I'll represent, okay, let's look at this scientifically.
Isn't this a personal problem?
Yes and no.
Why can't they just deal with it?
They are and they aren't.
What were they thinking?
Do you really want to know? Okay. Well, I believe everybody in this room wants to know, and I believe that everybody listening wants to know. So let's actually look at one of the luminaries of the field and what she has to say about soul wounds and what the answers to these questions are. Okay, so this comes from an amazing book, Soul Repair, by a scholar who I just, I'll say it this way, my wife knows I love her, and don't misinterpret me, but I have an intellectual crush on Dr. Brock's work. So with that in mind, Jeff, can you read this quote for us, please?
Moral injury destroys meaning and forsakes noble cause. It sinks warriors into states of silent, solitary suffering, where bonds of intimacy and care are impossible. It torments the soul. Its torments to the soul can make death a mercy. The suffering of a moral injury is grounded in the basic humanity of warriors.
Thank you, Jeff. Again, this is not a medical phenomenon. This is not a psychological phenomenon. This is not just an existential phenomenon. This is a human phenomenon altogether. Like what Matt said, it's not one specialist that is going to help this individual. It's all of us responding at once. Okay, so let's re-examine this. And by the way, having been trained as a first responder when I was young, we don't all want to go to the victim at once. But what we do want to do is say, how can we help? And we're already thinking that. So let's go through these same questions again, Matt.
Isn't this a personal problem?
This is a human problem.
Why can't they just deal with it?
They are trapped in an invisible crucible. Crucible, one of those things that the old people used to use when it came to the pharmacist in olden times, when they would crush and crush and crush it down.
What were they thinking?
More than their psyche is at stake, their existence is in great danger. Okay, so with this in mind, Matt, I just want to make this really clear. I just want to say thank you again for everybody who is listening right now, because if you're out there, you can help. And here's the interesting thing, the EOD tech and the EOD community, from the preliminary reconnaissance that we've done, they're open to it. They want it. They're ready for it. So this is a search and rescue mission to free our brothers and sisters in arms. They need to be released from the existential spiritual prison that they don't know that they can escape. I'm reading these because my memory is like Dory right now since the accident. What is the difference between the cost to produce an EOD tech and the value of that EOD tech's soul? And by soul, I don't imply anything religious, just the invisible stuff that matters, that keeps people going. Some souls are so lost that their body is alive, but they're not living any sort of life. And this quote is very powerful from a Utah veteran, and he knows who he is. Saving our own is the most meaningful endeavor we can do, period. That's from an individual who was in GWAT. Next. Okay, so to be very simple, since I've already gone too far with time, one of the things that nerds sometimes do is they get interested in words. And one of the interesting things about the word trauma is if you look at the history of that word, it comes from a certain Greek word. But if you look at the word that comes from, trauma doesn't just have one meaning, to pierce. Trauma has two meanings. It means to pierce or to burnish. So we're learning something there from the word itself. We're learning that there are possibilities that maybe they might not be able to see for themselves, but that we can see for them. Maybe instead of their lives being over, their futures being over, maybe their past lives are over, but it doesn't mean their future lives are done. And maybe let's look at post-traumatic growth that way, is the possibility that while I had this past life and I no longer have it, and now the life I have is hell, maybe my future life doesn't have to be hell. Let's think of that as post-traumatic growth, because it's not normal growth, it's post-traumatic growth. So with that in mind, this is very important. If there's anything in this entire time that we're interacting together that would be critical, it is to notice these three moral emotions. If you have an individual in your life, an EOD tech, or you as EOD techs have other EOD techs in your life who are expressing guilt or shame or anger, any combination of those at the same time, that is a cry for help. Many times, people misinterpret those moral emotions as stay the heck away from me. But this is actually what we've discovered is their paradoxical way of saying, I need help, help me. We don't condemn the person who has a compound fracture, who is crying out in pain, and say, hey, just suck it up and deal with your compound fracture. We don't say somebody who's having an aneurysm, who can't even speak, oh, you know what? So you've got a headache and your hand's shaking, just deal with it. So why are we telling the veterans when you are feeling guilt, shame, and anger, hey, just pucker up, buttercup, shut up? No, maybe it's time, because they're home, that they can speak with each other. And for those who are feeling these emotions from things that they have done overseas that they're not supposed to talk about with people outside the military, make sure you're only opening up to the people with the right clearances on your EOD Tech community. With that in mind, though, post-traumatic growth could look like something like this. Instead of these guilt, shame, and anger, remember, if we hear those three, stop, look, and listen. Just listen, hear them, understand them. Let's put our toolboxes away, as my wife would say, the other Dr. Anderson, the one who saves lives. Let's put our toolboxes away and just be with them. And what if they could feel forgiveness, self-respect, peace? And then they're safe. Of any community that works hard to make people safe, it's the EOD techs. That's their modus operandi. But then they can't get themselves safe, and they're asking for help in this unusual way. Let's stop, look, and listen. With that in mind, we'll finish with this. There's outstanding research by Tedeschi and Moore. Just fantastic research out there. And this is no criticism of the docs, the psychs, the chaps, and all those other people, the family members who are trying desperately to save their loved ones, to rescue their loved ones. This is no indictment of any organization. This is just saying we need to do differently and better and be more unconventional. What if we can help them find personal strength, better relationships with others, new possibilities that they can't see for themselves, appreciation for life, and spiritual and existential change? With that in mind, finish with this last story. True story, shared with me by an individual who, let's just put it this way, he's absolutely a veteran and his story is absolutely true. There were a father and son during Vietnam. They were in country. And while they were in Vietnam, the father was out on a mission. He got surrounded by enemy combatants, he and his team. And so what he did is he did everything textbook. He retreated to the high ground. The unfortunate thing is the enemy combatants surrounded and were closing in on the team. The son was at the same base and was a helicopter pilot. The son came into the radio room and heard the distress from the team and said, "That's my dad, I'm going to get him." And he went to the commanding officer at the time and said, "I need to go get my dad." For whatever reason, they had a back and forth. Suffice it to say that the son ended up going with his crew. As the one helicopter was going to get this team that was under fire, the son was communicating with the dad and said, "You can't pop smoke. You can't let the enemy know where you are. You're too surrounded. What's another way you can let me know where you are?" And the dad said, "It's time. I've had an orange piece of, and this is my TBI brain coming through with my Dory brain, but basically it's those orange things that are plastic and hard that help reflect light." And he had sewn one of those in his boonie hat. And he said, "Son, I'm going to flip my boonie hat upside down. And that's how you're going to see me." Well, sure enough, the son's like, "I've got you. Here we come." And this is a story where the good guys won. So the son got the team. The son and his crew got the team on the chopper. They got back to base. Both the dad and the son made it home from that tour. The point in that story is very simple. It can't just be us who want to help you EOD techs and the EOD community. You've got to want to help yourself. And this is going to be a very hard thing to say. But please, to quote Dr. Lewis, healing is hard work. But to quote Chaplain Vanta, let's help you live the rest of your life. With that in mind, please, if you need help, show us your orange. Flip your boonie cap. We're here for you, 100%.